I've got so many addresses. They must have moved every year, I think. You know, I'm sort of leaning towards that she was only a washerwoman, laundress, and not a preacher or speaker. Even though I found her address when she married, and it's very close to Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park.
Oh wow! So, but she was. I always have memories of. We used to call her Mummy, and we'd go and visit. We lived in Adelaide. She was in Murray Bridge in the country, and every weekend she'd have baking, and she just had the penny, you know, the old-fashioned pennies on all the time, and she just used to give the best hugs, and she, you know, just all the smell of baking and everything was always what I really miss about her. When I saw this on TV, I thought it was great. I thought, oh, I'm in.
Fantastic.
I remembered I'd written down the National Library from last week, so I thought, oh. So I sort of went into there, and I, you know, wasn't really sure what I was looking at, so I thought, oh, I'm just going to send them an email. And it was like the next day, go in there and there's an email from them with my grandmother's brothers and sisters, her parents, her great-grandparents. And I was like, oh wow, this is great. So we were just talking and having a play around, and we just typed in her name, and there she came up on Google. And it was because she was one of the first pioneer ancestors, colonists, sorry, to South Australia. And she was a housemaid at Government House in South Australia, and she came out on the William Mitchell ship, and there was a picture of her, so I printed out the picture and that, and would you believe we've got the same nose? We've actually got the same nose. It was, I showed my husband, didn't say anything, and he said, oh, hey, he said, have you looked at the nose? I said, yes. So yeah, generation after generation, to my grandmother who made me start this journey, and what a beautiful person she was. That this is why I can see how she's been turned to that type of person because of all the women back in her life.
Yes, who is that?
Wilhelmina WDYTSI.
Oh wow.
Basically, I have found out who her employer was here back in the early 1860s something. He turns out to be the first white person to settle here. Wow. So definitely, because it opened up more about how Mackay was back then actually, and to the names of places have changed so much. I think it gives you a sense of pride too, as to what these people went through to make this town that you've been born and bred in so wonderful. But I have since found through a book from Hamburg that she didn't actually go to New York. She came down the east coast of Africa and right underneath Australia, past Tasmania and back up the east side. So so she had a little rendezvous on the east coast of Africa, which resulted in my grandmother.
Oh, that's exciting.
Oh, well, I don't know. Being who she was 24, she decided to find another husband and had another 10 children. So
it's incredible, isn't it? I can't.
Okay, I actually have. It's not my story, but it's somebody else's story. Sorry. You know, they decided to name their child when they gave birth out in the country, and by the time the husband had a couple of grogs and got to town, he named it completely different.
So I want to know where she was living and what the times were like, and the housing, and you know, she had 10 children and she lost 6 of them. You know, they all died at a young age, and so I just wanted to have a look at that, and obviously why and how that happened with the children, and what life was like for her.
It's been really great. I was still getting stuck on information on after my lady had arrived in Australia, and it was all sort of a bit hazy after that, and I was working my way through all the children to try and find some records and stuff, and I came across last night actually a whole entire blog that someone has dedicated their life to doing this whole family history of this particular family, you know, all the way back to 1000 AD. And so everything that I've spent the last 5 weeks researching is all there.
Definitely.
Yes. Yeah.
Gives you so much insight into looking into their way of life rather than just finding facts and figures,
Yes.
dates and marriages. You know, this
Yeah.
has given me more insight into how to actually do a proper life story about them, really. I think by working with the group it would help enhance in your own story.
It's just ongoing. You find something and then you've got to find something else to work out why that happened, you know, so it's good to have so much locally as well.
Yes.
Really good.
We've been coal miners, you know, miners in my family way back, and I always thought that women did go underground.
Yes.
Because I've read about that, but then I read in Wales that it was illegal to allow women never went underground in Wales. Yeah. You know, like what the life would have been like in Wales at the time that she left, and you know, when she left when she was 21. And I wonder, I married, I came from, my mother's side were all Irish,
Right.
and I married an Englishman. I remember my mother being horrified that I married an Englishman. Well, she's a Welsh woman, and I think she married an Englishman. I wonder whether
Yes.
there were similar things. Like,
It's my great-great-grandmother, Annie Elizabeth Adams.
Looking at just now on the computer, I found some of the nonconformist records. And all I did was put in a street name. I wasn't even looking for those records that I'd been looking for. Put in the street records, and it just brought up this nonconformist that I've been looking for all week. Not a picture, but like a map of the institution where she died. And it was a poorhouse. So what I did wrong was I only focused on who they were, where they were born, occupations and things. I didn't focus on the stories. I've learnt that I have to look at what I've got already. Last week we just said we need to go back and look at our certificates that we had originally, because I've just bought the death certificate, and so I went home and had a look at all my certificates, and I found her birth certificate, her marriage certificate, her father's birth certificate, her parents' marriage certificate that I've had since 1990 in the cupboard.
I've found a bit more about me, Annie Mae's life. I've got into the newspapers, and that seems to tell you a bit more about their life, the daily life and what they've been up to. And her third husband, when it was his 80th birthday, she held a party for him, and there was a write-up in the newspaper and a bit, and it also tells you who was there, and then you get to know who their friends were and things like that.
Had a lovely family story. I asked a cousin if he knew anything, because it's his grandmother, and he said the only thing he knew was a story from his mother, who was this great-grandmother's youngest daughter, that when they moved to Harrietville, they were living in a town called Cassuas, and it was a horse ride over Mount Hotham with my great-grandmother clutching her eldest son the whole way to go on a great big mountain journey on horseback to go to settle in Harrietville, where they lived all their lives.
Wow.
So that was nice, and it gave me a bit more of a lift to keep searching. It would have been a big journey carrying a baby at your breast. It would have been horrendous trying to ride a horse through those conditions. So just her personal story as close as I can get. That's what I'm aiming for.
Thank you.
I was here yesterday finding it out, and yes, it was a bit of euphoria. I tell you, this is the 5th week of the project, and so I was starting to despair a bit that it wasn't going to come together. And now it has for me. I found out the things that I actually did set out to find out. So
I have heard a few stories about my grandmother's life, but I'd like to know a little bit more about where she came from and her ancestors as well. And I also I'm very interested in the process of finding out about ancestors and history.
I've chosen to look up my great grandmother. It's a very mysterious little story in there somewhere, and I haven't
nobody's told me anything really about her, and there's a lot of mystery, so I'd just like to find out a little bit more.
Not too bad. We've found a couple of little pieces of information that have led to us going different ways, so there's still a fair bit of mystery. So
I think for me the most interesting part is I found that my grandmother was 5 when her mother died. She died quite young at 42, I think it was. I think, did she die in childbirth? Was there, another brother or sister under her, or what happened to her after then? Because there's been talk of an orphanage somewhere along the line. Well, we've actually, we actually found out that they were all born in Australia, which was, we thought they came from Ireland. And we found out that her husband actually came from America, so that was a bit of a shock because we always thought it was Irish, the Irish ancestry.
The journey this week has been so frustrating. I just keep running into brick walls. It's been very, very hard, and it's doing my head in. I'd like to keep discovering, and I would like to make up a little booklet that just so the family can keep, because we never had anything. And I would have liked to have had a little bit of information, and that's why I'm doing this. And I sort of think once I find it, I don't want it to be lost forever. I want something there so that my kids can keep it and they can pass it on too.
There's not a lot that they like to give out on the orphanages, but I'll investigate further. But there was so many of them, I couldn't believe it, how many orphanages there were.
Yeah. And have you enjoyed it? Has it been difficult?
No, it hasn't been difficult. It's been really enjoyable. Loved it.
Okay.
And just the way people lived in those times.
I'm going to really miss it. I won't know what to do next Tuesday.
Like to share with other people.
Definitely. It is. It does your head in, but it's a good feeling to get a result later on.
I'm a photographer, and so I do, photos are a big thing for me, and I do make up photo books. And so I've already made a start on doing that, and I'd love to make a photo book at the end of this. It's, a coffee table book that a family member can just pick it all up and it's there.
So it's very interesting to just start looking into the background and why you just wonder why they did it and where they went, and it's so interesting to start finding bits and pieces, and you can tie their life into a story, which is what this program's all about. It's really good.
Okay. Girls at work and that have got enthused as well. There's one always been on board, but a couple of others have sort of coming on board, and I've done a little bit of stuff for them as well. It's been excellent.
Basically, I want to put all this information together and maybe either put it in a digital thing or a book sort of thing for so that my mother can read it and let her have a look at it, and also the rest of the family,
Oh, yes. I'm very excited.
Yes.
I was jumping up and down in there. Anyone got any news? I was the first one there jumping out. Yes, we have.
Oh, that's cool.
That's really good. Yeah.
We're off, Sarah, off to find gold. And that's what I put in my ancestor's mouth.
That is wonderful, Marlene. I can just picture it all happening.
That's great.
That is so cool.
Thank you.